Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'd like to start by welcoming our new state board members to their first official meeting. I'd like to take a quick opportunity to have each new state board members give a brief introduction of themselves, and then the other board members can just go around the room and state their name. Nathan, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Nathan Peterson, Des Moines native. I live in Iowa City, and I'm excited to be here.
Cassandra Halls from Carlisle, Iowa.
Elena Whittington from Diagonal, Iowa. I'm a student member.
Cindy Dietz, a native of Emmitsburg, Iowa, currently in Cedar Rapids.
Just your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Brooke Axiotis. I live in Des Moines, Iowa.
Thanks. Mike.
Oh, Mike May. I'm from Spirit Lake, Iowa.
Okay,
It's nice to have someone from Northwest Iowa here.
Great. All right. Thank you. We did have an opportunity to meet others. So thank you for everybody for being here today. I am serving as the board chair since today's day will be nominating a new chair. So in my first action, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. So the last time we did this was in March of 2020. So I think this might have been my first meeting when we elected a new chair virtually and in my office. We were in a much different time. So these are 2-year terms for board chair. So I would like to offer any nominations for board chair for the State Board of Education.
I would nominate John Robbins.
Second.
All right. Wonderful. Others? All right. We have a nomination of John Robbins as board chair. Does this need to be a roll call? Can we just make them? Okay, roll call, please.
Axiotis,
Aye.
Bradley,
Aye.
Dietz,
Aye.
Halls,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
May,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Robbins.
Congratulations.
Yay!
Now I'm going to turn it over you to open nominations for the vice chair.
Yes, we'll receive nominations for the vice chair.
I would nominate Brooke Axios.
Second.
Brooke has been nominated and second. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I recommend the nomination seats. Roll call vote, please.
Axiotis,
Aye.
Bradley,
Aye.
Dietz,
Aye.
Halls,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
May,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Robbins.
Aye.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would just like to thank Brooke for her years of service. I was speaking to her just a minute ago, and she said she'd been serving as the board chair for 4 years. So that's a great accomplishment.
Thank you.
Appreciate your leadership.
I would
Appreciate
enthusiastically second that.
it.
Thanks, Brooke.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is communication, and the first is public comment. We do have a statement before we move into public comment. It's the state board's agenda is full, and I may place limits on public comments based on the number of members of the public who intend to speak. I'll give each speaker 5 minutes or 3 minutes if there's a large number of speakers. When your time is allotted, I will ask you to conclude, and the board will move on to the next speaker. The department will not respond to public comment aside from requesting clarification. The department may place a topic raised in public comment on a future agenda. A topic from public comment that is not related to an item on the agenda will not be addressed at today's meeting. Are there any public comments to be made? Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to make comments today. I greatly appreciate that. I am Katie Grieving. I am the executive director of a nonprofit organization called Decoding Dyslexia Iowa. And I'm here today talking to you on behalf of thousands of Iowa kids with dyslexia and their families. As you may remember, I have been at the last 2 State Board of Education meetings asking the Department of Education about their plans to follow through with the Dyslexia Task Force recommendations. And I know there's a few new people here. It sounded like that those recommendations came out in 2019. One of the recommendations was for the department to issue dyslexia guidance to the schools. And the goal of the guidance is really to clear up misunderstandings that schools have about dyslexia and to give them information about best practices on how to serve these students, whether or not they've been diagnosed formally or not. I want to pause for a minute and ask you to consider some of these facts. In 2019, the Dyslexia Task Force, of which I was a member, conducted a very large-scale survey. And in that survey, about half of the educators who responded could not answer basic questions about reading disabilities like dyslexia correctly. And those included who we would think would be highly trained: reading specialists, special education teachers, and AEA professionals. About a third of the educators said they were for sure not allowed to talk about dyslexia at school with their colleagues or with parents. Another third were very confused, said they didn't know and certainly wouldn't feel comfortable talking about dyslexia. And only 12% of the educators surveyed said they learned about dyslexia in their teacher training. Roughly half felt any degree of confidence that they knew how to teach a student with a reading disability like dyslexia. Those facts are pretty startling, and they're from 2019. And all of that shows why guidance and leadership from the Department of Education on dyslexia and literacy is so desperately needed. We know that a guidance document cannot fix all of that. We do know that, but it is such an important step. And when information comes from the Department of Education, our schools listen. It really matters. Educators in that survey were asking for more help and information back then, and they are still asking now. We hear all the time from teachers on the ground and AEA professionals, we're waiting for the department to tell us what to do. We're still waiting. So I am pleased to share an update with you that the Iowa Dyslexia Board, of which I'm a member, has received a draft of guidance to review. And this is a very positive step. And I want to thank the department for providing that for us. That said, we at Decoding Dyslexia Iowa have a lot of concerns about that guidance. The task force back in 2019 offered some suggestions when it was meeting, but the draft we received is pretty different from those suggestions. And in reading it, we're pretty concerned that if it were to go out as it was, it would only add to the confusion that people feel. So we have provided the Department of Ed with some feedback, and we very much hope they will consider our feedback and look forward to working with them on that. At the last State Board of Education meeting, many of you who were here asked some excellent questions about dyslexia, and I enjoyed listening to that discussion. I will say I was on Zoom. It was very frustrating for myself and our team to not be able to participate and answer some of those questions, as we may have had some different information to share. And it was clear from the discussion that there's still a lot of misinformation out there. If any of you are interested in learning more about dyslexia and what parents and teachers on the ground face, we would love the opportunity to talk with you. I also wanted to share that our organization does Dyslexia Simulations, which are very eye-opening and revealing for people that go through them. We would love to talk to you about that as well. So thank you for your time, and I'll look forward to speaking with you again about all of this in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. If you're on Zoom with us this morning and you would like to speak to the board, if you would please use the raise hand feature in your Zoom window. We have no public comment.
Okay, we will move on the agenda then with the director's report.
So a couple of updates, and one is sort of actually timely related to actually public comment. If most of you, and maybe new board members aren't aware, that the department partners with the University of Iowa on something called the Iowa Reading Research Center. And their director, Deborah Reed, announced at their meeting yesterday that she will be leaving to take another similar position with another university. So just so that this board is aware of that, what we will be doing then is continuing our partnership with the University of Iowa, look first for an interim to serve in that role, and then long-term replacement for that position. Again, this is another one of those statutorily authorized priorities that the department follows. And is important serving the, the needs across kids and students across the state of Iowa. So we will keep you updated on that as well. Just wanted to make you aware of that since that was just announced yesterday. Katie serves on that board also in her role, which actually I think last week, that was her last meeting yesterday, but she has served actively in that role as well. Another announcement that you may or may not have seen, I'm not sure if we shared it in one of our updates yet, but Larry Weiss, who was in this room, is also and I was going to make him stand up, but is also leaving to take a new position at Iowa State University. It's a great opportunity for him to serve in another role. He's oversees the standard accreditation programs that we talked about earlier when we do those reviews. He's been a very important part of our team. I'm complimenting him and he's not here, but wanted to make sure we recognize him for his tremendous contributions for the department. And wish him well in his new role. We will probably still get to work with him a little bit in his new capacity, but wanted to let people know that today is actually his last day. So he gets to see all of you today and present, and then he will be done. So when you have a chance to see him, make sure you wish him well. I do just want to give a reminder also, because we send out so much regular communication with the board, I try to limit these board reports. I would certainly be welcome to more specific input on things that you want, but we send out a weekly update with a lot of information. The board does so much. We want to recognize the work of our staff, the things that we are doing, and that's why we share those with each of you. If there are items from those updates that you have questions on, please let us know. If there's ones that you want more information on, we can certainly look at how we add those to agenda items, but very happy to celebrate all that we do. Also want to recognize Heather Doe and her team for doing this, because it's a lot of work to do this every week, but we think it's important and we think it's valuable. So thank you for everybody who's part of that also. So I can't remember some of these things. I try not to repeat if it was already in there. I do also want to give a reminder though, as much as I want to remind you to make sure you check in those regularly, please make sure you are only using your state email for that communication and work. We do continue to receive reminders of just heightened concerns around cybersecurity. And so we want to make sure we're able to maintain the right balance of security, all that works. If you have questions or needs, let us know. We have a wonderful IT team. They're happy to help you out. If you need additional resources, just ask. Another thing that we are, as we learn things from the pandemic, we learn things that were great to do virtually or better to do in person, and how do we balance that? One of the things that we got really good at was connecting with districts and connecting with schools, and we did it fast and regularly. Now we're trying to kind of balance and right size what that looks like. One of those items then is shifting what our conversations look like with superintendents. We've been doing a monthly superintendent call with all superintendents. Early in the pandemic, I think it was weekly. I think sometimes it was even twice a week. We're trying to kind of scale back. We want to let them know we're still engaged and want to hear from them and give an opportunity to talk to the department. But we also want to balance it with their needs and make sure that everybody has the capacity to serve in that. So we're doing two things. We're going to shift the Zoom, because that allows us to engage quickly and easily and frequently, to more quarterly meetings with all superintendents. And then we're also reconvening the Superintendent's Advisory Council, which is something that had existed previously. This is going to look a little bit different, and we have sent these announcements out to schools that will be seeking nominations from each AEA for 3 candidates, and then we'll be convening a team from those that will be our sounding board and group that we can give proactive feedback on as we scale out of, reacting to the world around us to be more proactive and purposeful in our work. We want to have that team that can give us input and be the voice for the field, engage in some of that work. Those will be, there'll be 6 meetings throughout the year for them, 4 in person and 2 virtual. So collectively, we're still engaging with superintendents, 10 times a year in little different ways, but making sure we sustain those opportunities to connect, but make sure it also meets the needs that they have as well. So you'll be hearing more about that also.
Did you say there were 3 superintendents from each AEA?
That will be nominated,
Oh,
and we'll choose
nominated.
one from each of those. We want to make sure,
Okay.
we're trying to make sure from the whole picture that we have a balance. So
Okay.
prior to, it was just one person was each pick. Now we're having them nominate 3. We'll bring a pool together and try and make sure we hit size, demographics, kind of get the best picture of the state and have those serve on that board.
I served on that board. It was very, very beneficial for me and others as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've heard. So, there's people that don't want the monthly ones to end. There's people that want to engage this. We're trying to kind of blend them together. Again, it's that balance of in-person Zoom, using the technology when it works. But there also is just a real desire for us to be there in person. I think this past year I was able to get to every AEA and they're already trying to get me on the calendar for next year. So we want to make sure we're fiscally responsible and using our time and resources wisely, but we also understand that need for connection. So we're balancing that also.
Are those monthly meetings or quarterly meetings with the superintendent something that state board members can join?
I think that's something we could bring to them and have a conversation about. We've tried to design them really to just be a conversation with superintendents. They're not a public meeting. They're not recorded like some of our guidance webinars. So I think we could ask them for feedback on that. They're not a secret, but we want them to feel comfortable just having conversations about what things are. The more formal ones, the in-person advisory councils might be something we invite board members to be a part of if you're interested.
That would be nice, yeah.
Okay, you make a note of that, Carol.
Director Lebo, are these public school, community school district superintendents? I mean, has there ever been any private accredited school representation in this group? Is it completely not it doesn't fit,
I don't remember, did they nominate?
especially with a system?
Yeah, because it should, but go ahead.
Historically, there have not been, since it's being reconfigured right now.
It's just a question.
Yes, I think it should. I think that's something we can certainly add. Yes. True. Well, that's true. We do also have a non-public advisory board, but I think
That's the solution.
maybe there's a way to blend them. I think we want to make sure everybody has a voice in a different way, but there might be value of adding them to that group. I think.
My experience is they all work together. It seems like it could be beneficial if they were all there.
Yes. That's really good feedback. I think we'll add that and have a conversation about how we can implement that too. Thank you.
Any other questions for our director? Okay. Legislative update. They're done, right?
Good morning, everyone. Eric St. Clair, I'm the interim legislative liaison for the department. No, they are not done yet, though it seems like they could be, because they haven't really done a whole lot of work publicly in the last couple of weeks. I guess at this point, though, we are nearing the end of session, so we can kind of do a recap of where what they've done essentially over the week, and going back through notes and previous legislative updates that we provide weekly to the field. There are some general themes, I guess, that kind of neatly fit around what Governor Reynolds originally introduced as her education priorities at the start of the session, since a lot of what she outlined ended up being the general themes of legislation throughout the session. So those big, I guess, buckets of legislation would be around education choice and transparency, attracting and retaining teachers, work-based learning, and increasing support for education as a whole. The big one that has received a lot of attention, obviously, is the work around education transparency and education choice. And that's really encapsulated in the governor's bills that she introduced at the start of the session. Bills were introduced to both the House and the Senate. The one that closely matches still most closely aligns to those original priorities that the governor outlined would be Senate File 2369, which passed out of the Senate. And a lot of what happens for the rest of the session, and a lot of the other large bills that had momentum throughout the session, a lot of that hinges on what happens with the Senate File 2369, because as it was working its way through the Senate, it was substantially amended, and a lot of other bills and policy initiatives were wrapped into that bill itself. And so obviously we still have the Student for Scholarship program, which is a part of that work. There's several divisions in there that the department provided feedback on that would relate to open enrollment and special ed services for dual enrolled students. But there is also some substantial changes to the bill, particularly around the transparency provision. So the Senate, for example, amended the previous Division 1 and dropped in what started off as a parental and student bill of rights that was introduced by Senator Sinclair. So some of the same concepts around transparency that were originally introduced in the Senate bill in the governor's education priorities, so they still are in there, but it looks a little bit different. It's a little bit more expansive scope to some extent. They also amended in several House files that passed out of the House and went to the Senate. There was one related to that was a representative Dustin Height introduced around investigating and reporting of alleged violations from licensed practitioners, and a lot of momentum and a lot of attention throughout the session. There was a lot of work around teacher preparation program and program assessments that gained a lot of attention. That was wrapped into the Senate education bill as well. So when I say a lot of those big initiatives that we've kind of talked about throughout the session, you know, a lot of their success has now been tied to the governor's bill, right? So we'll see what comes of these behind the scenes negotiations, but to this date, we haven't seen a lot of public comment on what the final bill is going to look like, except that they're negotiating behind the scenes. The other big bill that we're watching would be the House Education Appropriations bill, outside of the allowable growth bill, which was passed earlier in the session, which increased K-12 funding by 2.5% for next year. The Education Appropriations bill funds basically everything else. It funds the Iowa Department of Education. It funds the State Board of Regents and the Regents institutions. It funds our community college system. It includes multiple key appropriations, including those through the Iowa Skilled Worker and Job Creation Fund, PACE, GAP, Workforce Training and Economic Development, very important programs for our community colleges. That's all funded through that appropriations bill. The House completed all their work except for the standing appropriations bill on appropriations, and sent all their bills to the Senate, where they have not moved them out of committee yet. Again, this is all being wrapped up around these conversations around the governor's education priorities. So we'll see what comes in negotiations. They can't be in session forever, and they're not getting reimbursed for their time anymore. And the interesting one I found is that they don't have their clerks anymore, which is apparently a really big deal. Probably a bigger deal than not getting paid is that they don't have a big cohort of clerks to support their work anymore. So what we've heard at the start of the week was that they have about 2 weeks is the target, which would put them towards the end of next week. So they are more or less done for this week. They'll come back on Monday, and we'll see what comes of it. We've seen in the past where once they get to that final point, they wrap up negotiations, they can move really quick if they want to. So it could be one of those things where there's nothing Monday, nothing Tuesday, and by the end of Wednesday, they're done and they're all home for the session. We'll just have to wait and see. So is there any questions about where we're at right now?
Any significant updates on Last Dollar Scholar?
There was a couple of bills that were impacting Last Dollar Scholarship Program for this year. There was one that would make part-time students eligible. And then there was also one that provided more flexibility for the for colleges to identify high demand jobs in their region for that program. Both of those passed out of the House are on the unfinished business calendar for the Senate. So we haven't seen work on those recently, but it's still possible that that they could move before the end of session.
Anything notable in the teacher prep provisions? You suggested that was part of that.
Yeah, one of them was wrapped up into the governor's bill around elimination of the end of program assessment, which I believe we talked about previously. There was also work around, well, you all know about the $1,000 teacher bonuses. Part of the education appropriations bill addressed the tax issue around those bonuses. So it would make those payments tax exempt, and it also would allow school districts to use end of year balances to pay for $1,000 bonuses for staff not covered under the original program. So there's that as well. There was a bill around that would modify the Teach Iowa Scholarship Program. We also addressed that one currently as well, and I don't recall the details of that. Larry's still not here, unfortunately, but there is that as well. And then the last one, Senate Bill 2377. That's similar to the one that makes changes to Teach Iowa Scholarship Program, but it also includes a provision which would allow school districts to use their management levy to pay for teacher recruitment incentive programs. And again, all those bills, those bills that I outlined are still eligible for debate, but they have not passed yet.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Eric? Thank you, Eric. Move on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from March 24 and April 20th to approve.
I move we approve both sets of minutes from March 24 and April 20.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those nay. It's passed. Iowa Western Community College. Do we have people on board here?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Giske. I'm the Bureau Chief for Community Colleges and also the team lead on our state accreditation process. So I think most of you are familiar with this process, but just for those of you who are not, the department is required to do a comprehensive accreditation visit with each of our colleges every 10 years and an interim visit on year 5. So what that means is you'll see an accreditation report for each college every 5 years. How it works is we'll bring you'll all get the full report, which you should have, and then we bring it to the Community College Council the day before with a little bit more in-depth look at the accreditation report. So we did that yesterday afternoon. And then at this meeting, I give a brief overview and then turn it over to a senior leader from the college. Because I think what's really valuable is to have a chance to hear directly from the college about what's going on their campus. So Dr. Dan Kinney is here to help us learn a little bit more about what's happening at Iowa Western. Are there any questions about accreditation? Is everyone kind of familiar with the process? This slide gives a brief overview. So both comprehensive and interim visits have an assurance component. That's where we look at their Higher Learning Commission accreditation report. And we go into a deep dive in each of these 8 state standards. Continuous improvement component is only part of the comprehensive visit. So that's where the college gets to pick a topic that it would like to learn more about. And we bring in experts from across the state to provide some best practices and really dive deep in a particular area of interest to the college. So Iowa Western chose work-based learning for their topic. So I'll go through a brief overview of the standards, a little bit about Iowa Western if you're not as familiar. We do a desk review and a 2-day site visit for each of our visits. So we were at Council Bluffs. You can see the region that Iowa Western serves on the map. They're one of the larger institutions, 4th in total enrollment, so nearly 9,000 students served. And this is data from 1920. 5th in distance learning, 8th in non-credit, lower in joint enrollment, but I know they've been making a lot of improvements in that area and are growing their numbers there. There are over 1,100 students living on campus, so kind of like Iowa Central that you saw earlier. They have a strong athletics program, a lot of activities, a really vibrant campus at Iowa Western. The first 2 standards quickly are faculty qualifications and load. So here we're making sure faculty are qualified to teach the courses they're teaching and that they're not teaching more than they are allowed to per code. We reviewed 20 faculty files at random. And looking at those files, all faculty were well qualified. No findings in this area. Our recommendations were more around streamlining the process, better articulating. There were some where it wasn't clear right away on the agreement document how they were qualified. So just some recommendations there. A recommendation around updating their process for checking faculty licenses. The faculty member has to have a current license in their file, and we found some that were not current, but they did have it. It just wasn't in their file. And then formalizing their mutual consent process, which just means that the faculty member needs to formally agree that I will teach these courses as overload. So no findings in that area. The third standard is special needs. So here we're really looking at how well are you serving unique student populations. That's really important to the state and to the colleges themselves. So here's some examples of some things they're doing really well. You know, we could probably have a couple pages of examples of what they're doing well to serve student populations, but they have their non-discrimination statement available in Spanish. They're serving the technology needs of students well. They can check out laptops, hotspots. They even have emergency funds available to assist students in need for whatever they might need to keep progressing. The only recommendation here was a slight adjustment to the non-discrimination language. They had their non-discrimination statement where it needed to be, and it was consistent. So that was just a recommendation. CTE program review. This is an area we look closely at. We're very invested in CTE programs. Some things are doing really well here. Colleges are required to assess 20% of their programs each year. So each program should be reviewed at least every 5 years. They're doing an assessment every year, which is great to see. They have robust enrollment and financial data available, a template. They use a unique data matrix where they can identify a program as either a growth program, a steady program, or a decline program. And for programs that aren't doing as well, they'll put together a program improvement plan. So doing a lot of things well there.
Amy?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
part of your report said that, you know, from 2017, that they lacked some qualities in their CTE program, and you saw some of those things not quite addressed yet.
Yeah, so at the interim visit in FY17, they had 5 findings. The one that continued to have problems at this 2022 visit was CTE program review. So as you'll go through the report, you'll see that's the one that had the most recommendations, and there were 2 findings in that area. So we're asking that the college give us a new CTE program review process by next May, to just ensure that that's being met. We do, and we kind of went into that at the council meeting last night, look at the previous accreditation reports to see what might be a pattern. The other findings from FY17 didn't appear again this time, but CTE program review one did.
Is that a little unusual?
Well, so I've only been doing this for about 1.5 years, but typically, you know, some things tend to. There's new senior leadership, new president, new CAO, chief academic officer in place. So I will say that it was very much on the mind of senior leaders. A lot of, you know, that it wasn't a surprise. So there are things they had been talking about. So I'm feeling pretty good that this time through we'll be able to address it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So when will you give them feedback again?
So probably throughout, any technical assistance that they'll need between now and May. So they have until next May to give us the, you know, the new CTE review process. And I would say it came up during their HLC review, some similar themes. So they're going to have to be working on this for HLC as well. So we can be available throughout questions, but when that report is due is when we'll, so it won't be another 5 years. We'll look at that when that May report is due.
When will you bring that back to us?
5 years at their interim visit.
That's the first we'll hear about it again.
Do we bring follow-ups back to the board?
So I would say we can bring those to community college council if you like. We haven't, because usually they're addressed. And so it's, you know, it's going to be addressed unless it isn't. And then we would bring it back to you. But if, for example, the community college level, you want to see it again, you absolutely could.
Is that unusual, Jeremy, that we would see this occur in 2 different, you said 2 years ago, we had the same issue?
It would have been 5 years ago, yeah.
And we're still dealing with that?
You know, it can happen. And certainly then, you know, that's why we're going to follow up pretty quickly to address it, right? The first time around, it wasn't a big enough issue that we had an immediate follow-up scheduled. This time we do. And we feel really good that this is going to be resolved in talking with college leadership.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. So our recommendation, so a finding has to be a clear violation of code. The recommendations tend to be things where this whole process is meant to be continuous improvement. So areas where it might benefit the college to make some shifts, that's what tends to be recommendations. One recommendation we have was to move so I mentioned that program improvement process. A program that was a growth or steady didn't have a real goal setting process in place. It was only the declining programs. But I know HLC likes to see, a goal setting process for all programs. So that was one of our recommendations, to place faculty more centrally at the heart of the process and to tie it better to assessment of student learning. HLC will be looking for that as well. The two findings were around ensuring all the criteria were in place, and there's a list in the report and in code about what exactly has to be included. And then looking at student outcomes by various student demographics. So code requires that the program is intentionally looking for ways to remove barriers for students, traditional and non-traditional. And the programs were looking at demographics, but not outcomes. So it was hard for a program to identify a barrier for a particular group of students. And as I mentioned, the May 1, 2023 is when we'll be looking for that revised program process, and we'll certainly help the college any way we can along that way. Standard 5 is facilities. This is an area of strength, I would say, for the college. We talk with students at every visit, and that they mentioned the modern facilities as being one of their favorite reasons for being an Iowa Western student. So they should really be commended for all their work in that area. They also are doing a lot in the area of safety, security, and accessibility. One recommendation here was just, we were hearing from that they have to put together a facilities plan that's approved by the board. Throughout the interviews, we heard that the community would like that to be a little bit more of a broad process, getting engagement from internal stakeholders. That was that recommendation. Same with strategic plan. So the only rule in code is that they have a plan and it's updated every 5 years. But President Kinney, being only in the college for about 1.5 years, is looking to update the plan and is taking the approach to really attack culture and shared governance. Because if you want to build a strategic plan with a lot of involvement from the community, those things need to be in place, a strong culture of shared governance. So we really commend his work on that. Recommendations were just ways to potentially improve the strategic planning process for the college. The last finding was in the area of quality faculty plan. They do have a plan approved by the board annually. Some recommendations to how they might make that plan more beneficial for the community, engaging faculty, moving the process digitally, and perhaps intentionally connecting it better with specific instructional competencies. So each faculty member does set 3 goals for themselves. In code, it talks about how you might outline specific things you want your instructors to know and skills you want them to develop to grow. So some ideas for the college there. The finding was around who appoints faculty to the Quality Faculty Plan Committee. It needs to be the Higher Ed Association for the college and not administration. And they've already adjusted that. So that finding has already really been addressed. The last standard is senior year plus. So this is actually a 3rd accreditation process that the colleges have to go through, a NACEP for the concurrent enrollment. And they do have the accreditation through NACEP through this academic year. Have spent the last 2 years working on reaccreditation for the next 7 years. And I would say they've done, you did get it. All right.
That was in this.
Yeah, they've worked very hard over the last 2 years with brand new staff to address all of NACEP's concerns. So we're feeling really good about their concurrent enrollment program and really applaud them for their work in that area. It's just a few final themes. Just again, want to commend them for their push to improve campus culture and shared governance. I think that is a theme that goes through a lot of our standards and will really pay off for the college. Students feeling very safe and cared for, very complimentary of staff and faculty. And we were impressed that the areas where they did need improvement were very much on the minds of leaders. It wasn't a surprise, the things that we were bringing to their attention. And we like to see that because we know that the work is underway. So I will pass it off to President Kinney. Unless you have questions for me, we can also take questions at the end. Do you want to sit or stand? Or?
I'd like to see it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna grab a bottle of water. So thanks. And, on behalf of myself, Director and Jeremy for their leadership that they provided community college system, and Amy Other and the team that was there, it was great. It's great communications and things like that. A lot of what they talked about, I probably threw it out in the first session. This is where you're going to find us. I mean, needed to be pretty straight and honest. So as a president at Iowa Central for 11.5 years, came into Iowa Western just the previous last January. followed a great leader, needed some work on some stuff. And I can say that it was the predecessor was my father. So my father was president there for 27.5 years, and I followed him as the president. So I had what the board wanted. So, honestly, let's go through. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I found. I think it's going to address a lot of what you're saying. And then I'm going to talk a little about where we're going into the future. So, I went into the institution, did my first 100-day listening tour, just shut up and use these more than that. And really got in and heard a lot of things. And one was culture. I know we got to be moving forward with planning and things like that. But, Peter Drucker says it correctly, culture is going to eat strategy any day. We needed an improvement on that. So we spent really that first 6 months there really working on that, opening up our lines of communications through shared governance, working with faculty, the staff themselves. There's great ideas there that we needed to bring up. It was a little bit more top-heavy driven than what I'm used to in an institution or leading an institution itself. I can tell you we did a kind of a faculty staff survey, just got the results back, did it again. We had improvements in everything on our culture by double-digit percentages. I mean, we really hit it out of the ballpark pretty quick, and I knew I needed to do that pretty quickly when we got there. So, really the past 18 months, being there, is getting that culture moving there. Really looking at our data. We got to clean up some data. We're working on some things there as we move through. But most importantly, really improve the relationship with our high schools. We need to really get out there, the concurrent enrollment and dual credit. And so that was kind of the first year focus on it, on the enrollment side of it. Because if I have those students starting to take classes with us while they're in high school, guess what? They know us are going to come on. And we're already starting to see that for next year. So we were a little over about 11% increase in our high school enrollment last year or last academic year, or this academic year, I guess. And then right now we're tracking another about 15% increase in enrollment. The 11% we had last year is translating into our new students coming in. We're seeing a significant increase there. So I'm excited about that. I know we took it. People are a little weird. You're a college. Why are you focused on high schools? Well, that's our first focus that we needed to do as we move forward and building that. So really kind of redid that, increased that, and going forward there. The other thing is we really focused on looking at our region and needs coming out of COVID and what was happening there. We did a program. We offered 100 free CNAs. We had 79 individuals take us up. We're trying to get adults back into the system. That's one kind of lacquer, I think, that we're really looking at as we go through. So we did 100 free CNAs. Unfortunately, 79 people took us up on it. But we're expanding that program now this summer. We're going to do the welding. We're going to go back into CNAs a little bit. So really trying to help build that for the adult student market too, because we were doing really well on the traditional 18 to 20-year-old coming out of high school student. We needed both ends of the others to be worked on. So, definitely came in, at challenging times with COVID and what's happening out there and dealing with how we turn around. Really the next 12 months this is going to be a tough one. We're really going to work on our data governance, security of data, working on better data points out there, trying to improve onto that. We're going through shared governance. As you talked about, people wanted their voice, or their voice is being heard very well now. We're really revamping our shared governance. While at the same time, we're going through SEP, strategic enrollment planning. How do we really plan moving at future? How do we get that change moving to the future? At the same time doing SCP. And on top of all this, I got an HLC accreditation. It's been exciting, but we had a lot of turnover in senior leadership as I came in, which is normal when you move into that. But have a great, I know one of the points that was up there was the assignment of the QFP. A new CAO came in, needed somebody, so she grabbed a faculty member and assigned him to it. Well, unfortunately, the way it really works, and she was new to it, she was a dean, had been previously a dean there. So the instructional council had appointed that, and it's really through faculty senate, or through not faculty senate, but the faculty negotiation, higher education team there. So those are things that we're able to do. So as we move forward, and then the other big thing is modernizing. She talked about a little bit about our program review and things like that. We're still a little bit antiquated on that. We're still doing a little bit more paper and pen, where we're putting some softwares in place right now to really improve onto that, to be able to use that, to pull it out, more efficient type of systems, things like that. in looking at accreditation, our assessment, our classroom assessment, all that together, bringing it into one document. So we'll have that up and going. Probably won't get it completed until after our accreditation visit because we got to just push through with this HLCI. We'll turn in our assurance argument here first part of September, and then the federal team will roll in October for that. So as we go, so just some news and some, I think great things happening there. We talked about dual credit. We started one career academy in Missouri Valley area. We brought 4 school districts together. So we're taking that out. If you've ever been to Western Iowa, there's not a straight road in Western Iowa. And when I learned that, we were telling students to drive from these communities at 30, 40, 50 miles away down to be able to take college classes. So we're pushing it out. So we're able to do some fundraising up there and purchased a building. Just got controlled 2 weeks ago. The hardest building I've ever purchased in my life. And we'll be putting 4 career academy tracks up there. In Harlan, we're expanding, doing similar deal. We went into a joint venture probably 10 plus years ago, I believe it would have been, with the city there, build a new facility. We were on the south half of it with classrooms and stuff like that. The north half was to be an incubator. And unfortunately, the city could never get their incubator off the ground. They had some space that I needed because I needed to focus a little bit more on a CTE. We didn't have CTE programs at Harlan. Or we did, but they were just in small classrooms. It didn't work well. So I started meeting with city manager and he goes, yeah, I think we might be interested. What did you pay for? I said, I'll give you $1 for it. They took me up. So I bought that facility, but it took the needle where the community, what they wanted to see and stuff like that. So we'll be bringing about 4 other programs in this year. And we'll be starting up 3, we're going to start 3 career academy tracks there. Again, exposing high school students to that. The best time for them to learn if this is a career they want to be into is while they're still in high school. So excited about those opportunities, getting ready to kick one off. Hopefully this next fall with down in the East Mills district area, doing some work in Atlantic, Clarinda, different areas right now. So really trying to robust and build that. We received a $475,000 aviation grant. We have one of, I think, 2 or 3 aviation mechanic programs in the state of Iowa. So we received a $475,000 grant to help us build capacity in that program, but also focusing on underrepresented individuals into that field. I can happily say we had a aviation day one day and we had 10 young ladies walk through the door. I was excited about that because that's a very male dominated field that's out there. So we're going to build on that one. Honestly, I think the biggest thing is our SEAM program, Center of Excellence in Advanced Manufacturing. It was built, or we put it in at our Clarinda Center in conjunction with businesses. We're going to take that and expand it across. Now, this is non-credit side of the house. This isn't credit education. This is non-credit, more for adult learners, but it's also good for businesses who they need somebody in welding, 1 or 2 people. Well, most of them need more than 1 and 2 people, but I'm gonna say this. So they hire them, they put them through the program. So businesses are putting them in the programs. We're doing it in the evenings, weekends, different times like that. Then, spend some time with us, but then they're also working full time because an adult learner cannot just walk away, go to college on a traditional track. They don't need spring break. They could care less about spring break. So trying to get it through that. So there's a big push of that non-credit that we're doing to get them in there now. It's advanced standing. So if an individual, Dan Kinney, goes through that, I get my welding diploma there, but then I want to go through and get a complete welding certificate. Eventually want to get my diploma or advance or go into another area of that. We can bring that in, transport it from non-credit to credit training, or from non-credit to credit, add that to there, and they can start moving forward on those degrees. So micro-credentialing, you're going to start hearing more and more of that coming out. That's a lot of what we're trying to do as we move forward. So, the future of the community colleges, I think, are strong. I will tell you, I think we've got to be agile now. I think I'll be honest, pandemic exposed a lot of higher education, the needs and what's out there. We're going to quit going to degrees and we're going to start talking more credentialing. There's some good research that's been done out there. It was started prior to the pandemic. Arthur Levine's done some great work. I know him and talk to him regularly, and just wrote a book. He's done his research, but then he the pandemic came and it pushed everything a little bit faster than what he would see. So credentialing, I mean, a lot of people are getting in our space right now. Microsoft, I can get a credential for $499 and go to work for Microsoft and stuff like that. So we as community colleges, remember that's changing that. And that really changes our SCP process. I mean, the traditional way of doing strategic planning, we can't do that anymore. We got to set our goals, what we're going to look at in 4, 5, 10 years down the road. But our plans need to be done yearly. I mean, because things adjust too quickly of what's happening right now. Finances, I could have a great plan to build a building in 5 years, but financially, some finances could change pretty quickly. We're starting to see that. I mean, back when I became a president 13 years ago, I think it was 9, 10, 11. We saw that. We saw our enrollments go up. We just struggled there. So we're really looking at that. You talked about it. I think you asked about the question of part-time students. That's exactly getting that last dollar scholarship for those part-time students, those adult learners. Because as I said just a little while ago, is they don't have the times to come in and here's our class if we're in between these time frames. We got spring break. Well, we're off for a month for holiday breaks and stuff like that. So I think it's important, really, how do we dress our part-time students better? I think it's going to be more non-credit. You're going to see less credit in that world and more non-credit, getting them that credentialing to the workforce as we go there. And you talked about workforce. We're seeing the same struggles. We're having a more difficult time hiring people and retaining them. I mean, I had probably in the last 6 months, 4 employees that were they were going to go work from home. 2 of them have called and want their job back. They don't like working from home. I mean, it is something kind of a neat deal to do, but it's not what we did when the pandemic hit. Yeah, we were working from home, but we were just scratching the surface to get to the next level. So with that, what questions y'all have of me? I know I'm quick, I talk fast, and I try to highlight a lot of stuff. I could be here all day. The director would be kind of mad at me because I take over a whole board meeting. So questions y'all have?
Questions? Yeah, 2 or 3 just to get some conversation. So what are you doing in terms of dual enrollment? You said we're trying to beef that up. You have.
So I reorganized that whole department about a month into the position. So we ended up moving an individual. We took it to a higher level, went to a dean's level. So we have a dean of secondary partnerships now, and meets regularly with the superintendents. Well, not really. I meet more with superintendents, with the principals, counselors, and stuff like that, pushing what they need. As I said, agile. What Missouri Valley High School needs is a lot different than what Council Bluffs High School is going to do. With Council Bluffs being there, we have the early academy. I mean, we probably have 400 or 500 of their high school students on our campus all day long. Here in about a week and a half, we'll probably graduate with certificates, everything. I think we have 120 kids, high schoolers, juniors, and seniors that will come out, will either have their associate's degree, a diploma, or certificate in an area that they studied on there. So working with them, taking what we need to them, trying to get the high school students involved. As I said earlier, I think it's important. I have a daughter, she hated school since kindergarten. And, not every student wants to go on college. So if we can start with the high school, start giving certificates in welding, CNA, stuff like that, we get them to work. Now, my youngest daughter, who hated school, went out, started working. She's matured. She's done some things. She's back into school. I mean, that can happen. Not every kid's ready. I honestly wasn't ready, but I was kind of forced to. But so that's what we're trying to do to get into those kids, get them to work, get them into that. Honestly, they're going to mature.
So who keeps track of your standards? Is there someone in the school, in the community college that is responsible for following standards? Do you have somebody to up?
Well, so yes, every institution I call it Dean of Institutional Effectiveness. In fact, unfortunately, she just left me, so we've got a new one in. But we have a Dean of Institutional Effectiveness that helps, works at that, looks at their parameters. We're creating more dashboards of where our enrollment at, where's our budget at, how are we meeting certain standards in HLC and stuff like that. So we have those in there. The one thing we don't have at Iowa Western, and I know you guys talked to Iowa Central, if you all remember. Okay, I was the president there for 11 and a half years. What you heard from them is what's kind of being implemented a little bit, because when a leader moves, he takes that. But we're putting a software in that at any time I can pull up, go and hit standards. It ties your strategic plan, your enrollment plan, your facilities plan, all those plans together into to hit your criterion for HLC. There's criterion that we have to meet in HLC. We can pull our data over for that. Same thing is we'll put our state accreditation process into there to be able to track that we can see it better. Unfortunately, we're still pen and paper right now. So that's a tough way to track it. But no, we're putting a system in to improve that.
What tracks are you opening up at Harlan?
What tracks are we going to do there? In Harlan, we've got auto, but it's kind of a dual between diesel tech and auto. We're doing welding, but we're doing welding with at the high school because they already have a lab there. Then in addition to that, we're putting some electrical into there. And then the third one, it's leaving my mind right now. We have the auto, I got the diesel. We're bringing in electrical, construction, carpentry, skill trades in the carpentry. So
thank you.
Yeah.
We have a question for you.
Yes.
So it seems like you have a lot of exciting things going on in terms of programs, credentialing, et cetera. But do you measure anything post-graduation in terms of like the effectiveness of those programs and what it's actually doing for the students when they're actually in the workforce?
We do. That's a tough one for us. Now we're going to get involved. So there's a system called the National Student Clearinghouse. We're going to go to a mega user of that, which helps you track how students transfer on. We put data into there. We, unfortunately, the level we are at right now isn't at, I call it the mega user, where I can go back and say, okay, how did a student transfer to Iowa State or transferred to University of Florida? What happened after they left us? That's going to help us. The struggle is getting students to fill out our surveys. That's what we've ran into. I mean, we track it the best we can, or we're required to by the federal government, but it's only as good as if I send everybody a survey out here and only 2 of you send it back to me. I mean, I'll send it again. Maybe I'll get a third one to send it back. That's the struggle in doing that. But I think there's some data sets that are coming out there that we're going to work to improve on through our data governance. That's one of the things I really want to focus on is what are some of those indicators that are hitting out there. I mean, I get plenty of, the hearsay stuff. Employers, oh my gosh, you're putting out a great welder. They've done this and stuff like that from our locals. Because I would say probably 70% of our graduates stay there locally within the 9 counties that we serve. So I get that, but to have that true data, what are they making? How are they coming out? There is a way we do send, unfortunately, being on the river, is we send a lot over into Nebraska. So I'm trying to get into some of those for here in the state of Iowa, the IWD's work site to try to do that. That's a struggle because the DOL at the federal level, it's data, it's security, giving us information. Is it released? Stuff like that. That's a struggle, but we're going to find ways to do that better.
Okay, thank you.
It is one of the required elements in this Cte Program review is at least employment rates and wages.
Okay, and we get those, but unfortunately, again,
Self-reported.
usually about a 30% response rate is all we're getting. We're not getting, if it was 70%, I feel better about the data, but we're only getting usually about a 30% response rate. And we try to call them, we try to do this and we try to do that. It's a difficult situation.
I would sympathize with you. I'm sure that is incredibly difficult, no matter what level that you're dealing with.
Well, but the problem is they're under our email system when they leave. If we haven't captured that data, what's their new email? They switch their emails, I don't know how many times. Heck, they switch their phones 4 or 5 times while they're in college. So it's struggle.
A quick, concise response, please, from both Amy and President Dan. So we have the DE accreditation, we have the HLC accreditation. There's another accreditation for post-secondary.
NACEP.
How similar or dissimilar are those accreditation process? I'm just thinking, if I'm the president, is there any way that this could be more manageable for me when I go through all this stuff?
That's why we've worked over time
Yeah.
to at least streamline. We don't do what HLC does. We just look at what HLC has done and then do the other state standards. And the NACEP as well. We have senior year plus. We could dive a lot deeper with senior year plus, but we look at what NACEP has already done. So we do try to not duplicate what HLC and NACEP have done. But it is a lot.
It is, and unfortunately, it all hits at one time. that's the killer. I mean, when it gets to it. Now, it does. I will say the Department of Ed's process with HLC, I would say 5 years ago, it was tough. I mean, the community college struggled because I think they went into stuff that HLC is looking at. Unfortunately, sometimes you had somebody saying, well, it should be like this. And I got HLC saying it's like this. I'm like, okay, how, which one do I go with? When it comes to it. But no, I think, it's improved. I will tell you, I would have went through Iowa Central's 5 years ago. I think it would have been our interim. This process is a lot better. So I'm going to say with what they're doing on this is good. I struggle with NASEP. I'm not going to lie. I think she can do a hell of a lot better than that accrediting agency. And I'll tell you that right out on the board right now. That is a struggle because I got people from other states. We do dual credit enrollment concurrent so different in the state of Iowa than when I was in the state of Nebraska, when I was in the state of Kansas. So I do believe if we would go into senior year plus and do away with NASEP, I would be okay with that one. That's a struggle. I mean, I get somebody comes in and says, well, in Michigan, we do it this way. Well, great, but you don't have supplemented weighted dollar in Michigan, And so that's the one I struggle with that I think her and her team could have done 3 times. I already had that visit this year. I think I'm approved, so hopefully this isn't recorded. But honestly, I think Amy and her team would have done a lot better job and understanding the way the state of Iowa is. But we do have NASEP, and we at Iowa Western struggled with NASEP. I didn't struggle with it as much as my previous, but we did a lot of work on it my first few months. Jeremy said, hey, you got some improvements you need to do. So we got those implemented and we went through fine with this accreditation. So.
Amy, you have a recommendation for the,
Yes, the review team does recommend approval for reaccreditation for Iowa Western for the next 5 years.
I would move we do that.
it's been moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And I make a recommendation, you don't let any of these people leave.
You're not recognized for that.
Can I ask you?
I try, yes.
So I can ask you a personal question?
Yep.
Have you ever hit yourself with that ring?
Nope. No, so this is we do have a pretty robust athletic program, and so I look at, and I think I kind of shared it with them, athletics, fine arts, the music, drama scene. I think that's important, clubs and organizations on a college campus, because our students who do academically better, who are involved on our college campuses and their counterparts who are not. So I really do. I always I've got 54 national championship rings in 20 some years I've been, most of them as a president, but kids recognize that. The kids know me. I mean, you can say that. Unfortunately, we got a hiccup for students, for them to see students and give me 5 minutes. I pull kids out of here and there, and they came and talked, but the kids know me. But I think it's important on that, even the fine arts and the dramas and things like that. So we push those heavily. So
Thank you, Dan.
thank you. So
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is the Iowa Community Colleges Certified Budget.
Hello again. Taking off the legislative liaison hat, putting on the administrative consultant hat. That's my home base is in the Division of Community Colleges and Workforce Preparation. I serve as an administrative consultant for policy and finance in that shop. So in that role, I am presenting to you today Iowa's Community College Certified Budget Report. There's a statutory requirement that annually around this time of year that you review these budgets that are prepared by each community college and approve them for the upcoming fiscal year. Some background around the process and what the budget does and does not do briefly before you take a motion. Each year around January, the Department of Management sends out report templates to each of the community colleges. They complete those reports. They have a public comment period locally and hearings locally around the certified budgets. They have to submit them to their controlling county auditor. And then ultimately that information is fed back up to the Iowa Department of Management. We work with the Iowa Department of Management to get these consolidated reports, and then we prepare this report and present it to you. These budgets, I guess the best way to put them are the college's best guess at what their financial situation is going to be for the upcoming fiscal year. When they prepare these starting in January, early February, and are going through the process, there's a lot of unknowns at that time. They don't know what state general aid is going to be for the upcoming fiscal year. They don't know enrollments. They don't necessarily have their tuition set yet. So they use a lot of they use assumptions based on enrollment patterns, financial trajectory, that kind of thing, feed that information into here, and that is what is ultimately approved. The main reason for doing this report is that it establishes each college's tax levy for the upcoming fiscal year. But it does give you somewhat of a sense of the community college's financial condition, and it provides a little snippet of their financial trajectory in that it provides what their projection is for the next fiscal year. It re-estimates their budget totals from current fiscal year in which they're preparing the budget. And then it also provides the actual financials from the previous fiscal year that are pulled from each college's financial audit. So you can see a small window of the financial condition of each community college. But again, this is kind of also a snapshot in time. It's going to leave a lot of detail out. If you want to know exactly what's happening with each community college and their financials, the audited financial reports are where you need to go for that information. So again, this is mostly for establishing tax levies for the upcoming fiscal year. If you go through the report, notice at the bottom of each table, there's that estimated total tax rate per $1,000 value. That's what they're setting. You'll also notice that most of the colleges had an opportunity to respond and provide a narrative for their budgets. And for the colleges that submitted those, that is included below each table as well. So you can hear in their own words what factors went into establishing this budget. Are there any questions?
Question. This was brought up yesterday at the Community College Council about this report is, I would say, less than accurate as far as it's their best guess is what their budgets will be. Is that, did I glean that correctly?
It provides targets for the upcoming year, and there is amendment processes that allow them to revisit it throughout the fiscal year after it is adopted, but it's a target and their best estimate of what their finances are going to be.
So it's subject to amendment and fluctuation between now and when?
Throughout next fiscal year, it can be amended. Yep.
Okay.
Is the estimated total tax rate meant to somehow give us a measure of comparability? Or what's that for?
It's just what they're allowed to assess.
They're so different. They're so different.
Yeah, yeah. And each college
are twice as much somewhere as they are.
Yeah, yeah. Each college has different needs, and that's reflected in here. And there's different strategies that go into this. That is just one component of their overall finances.
But if we're approving this, are we approving these different strategies by virtue of approving this? I mean, I'm not objecting to any of this. I'm just trying to understand what exactly we're doing here.
Yeah, I think it,
I mean, a budget should be a numeric representation of your desire to accomplish your mission financially over the next reporting period.
And they certainly do that. And he's still here, so he can talk about his process if you want a specific example at the local level. But this is, again, provides that target that they go for the next fiscal year. And as a lot of the variables that they don't know at the time that they prepare this report become more clear, they revisit it. And then they also establish operational budgets at the institution that is actually going to guide their spending for the upcoming year. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, so mine, if you look at mine, it's a no increase in enrollment. It is estimated on an $8 right now increase. It went off with the governor's what she had put in for her for the community college state general aid. So, I mean, we try the best as we can. We're spitballing it. I mean, I hate to say when we're trying to do that. Mine had to be adjusted this last year because I had a $3 million donation on a facility that a funder came to me and said, I want this done. So I had to adjust mine because I had not put that in some capital there. It's difficult. It works though. I mean, it works in the system, but you know, heck, I was hoping to have state general aid and budget set a week ago. I'm not even close to that. I'm hoping by end of January or June, but when it comes to it, so it's kind of the best guess. I think I'm gonna say we're pretty accurate. You're not gonna see a lot of adjust. I know definitely from me, you're not gonna see a lot of adjustment. I think most community colleges, Jeremy, and you guys can speak to that, but no, it's difficult, but it's a good starting point for us is what it is.
Eric, I think one of the challenges that the community colleges face is the timelines for creating these budgets are in legislation. They have to follow a specific timeline to submit this. And the hard part is that the numbers required to actually create the budgets that they have to manage aren't aligned with when they get the actual numbers. So they're trying to create these budgets to align with the timelines that they're legislated to comply with without having all of the information. Which then puts the Board of Education in a very difficult position because we have to honor the timelines that were legislated to act within without the community colleges having all the information that they need to give us all of the information we need to be efficient.
I'm being asked to approve of a budget.
They're being asked to create one.
It
To
seems
comply
to
with
be
legislation.
It seems to be admitted that it doesn't comport with
We discussed that as part of the
reality
council
is.
last night, the same challenge. And part of what we learned in that discussion is that it isn't just the community colleges that face this challenge, but the legislation. And I'm looking at the whole team here as I talk about this, so please help me. But this is legislation that also impacts municipalities and other entities, this budgeting process. So this is something that gets looked at multiple times over the course of lots of entities dealing with this challenge. But recognizing the budgets have been submitted through multiple public hearings and have been open to public comment. So we aren't the only body that's evaluated these pieces as well. So
From a person who sat on a local school board for a long time, that up until the state got better at giving us our state aid early, we were running into the same types of budgets. So we would create a budget based on what we thought the state might do and known costs. And the board would approve the budget, keeping in mind that we knew the budget asking could never go up, but it could certainly go down. So this to me is not new. I've lived through this before at the local level.
So this is pretty good on the expense side, is what you're telling me? It's just the revenue side is.
Right.
All right, that helps.
And honestly, I've done this in 3 states. This is probably the best state. I'm not gonna.
That's good.
We had 2 budgets in the state of Nebraska without appropriations. And well, they had appropriations, but when you get to there, well, now they cut your appropriation. So honestly, this works well. So don't, think, oh my gosh. Every state has their issues. I think Iowa is okay with it. I'd love something different, but it's not perfect.
One of the two of you just review for me, from my old man's memory, the levy. How does that work for you, Dan? How does levy?
So not a lot of fluctuation in state levy in the state of Iowa where other states have that. We've got the 6 cent, oh my gosh, I can't think of the equipment, all that. So that's preset. That was set in 1966 and never changed.
Sure.
That's something that needs to be looked at in state code and stuff like that. Our insurance levy, we do have some flexibility because you don't know what your insurance is going to be. So that is where probably any flexibility comes. Where we're different than the other states is when you start talking locals, that I believe is into there is bond issues, things like that you've gone out and done. So
thanks.
The Legislative Services Agency has actually prepared a summary document about the community college levies, and I can share that with you if you're interested.
I love that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Eric, you have a recommendation for the board?
Yes, well, the board, I asked that the board consider approval of the community colleges certified budgets for fiscal year 2023.
So moved.
It's been moved. Seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
no problem.
Thanks, Dan.
Adult education. And literacy.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to try to quickly demystify adult education and literacy for you, as well as walk through some details of the report that you have before you. So adult education and literacy is funded under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. That act was reauthorized in 2014. The state board actually oversees, this is Title II of that act. You also oversee IVRS, the Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and that's Title IV. So the board actually is engaged in 2 of the 4 titles of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Funds are allocated for adult education, also for corrections education, as well as for servicing those in integrated English literacy and civics education, so servicing our refugees. Specific purposes of the funds are related to really a multi-generational approach, if you will. We serve individuals from 16 to 116. We really address those needs of those that are no longer in K-12, but might lack those basic educational function levels. They might struggle with English. They might struggle with math and reading, but really it's intended to be able to assist them in gaining employment and outcomes. And I apologize, I probably didn't introduce myself well enough. Alex Harris, I'm the state director for adult education. I've been in that role for 10 years here at the department. I also serve as the president of the National Association of State Directors of Adult Education. I'm moving into my 2nd year in that term. So I've been around with adult education for a while. Before that, I worked in voc rehab. I worked in workforce development. I did economic development in Australia. Lived in Sydney, Australia for 7 years, and really landed in adult education after studying international economics. So this is sort of a different sideways approach to it, but definitely an area of passion and need, moved from fiscal capital to human capital, because I really appreciate and understand the role that people play in that. So in addition to serving those needs, many individuals come to adult education seeking after a high school equivalency. But that's not all that we do. In 2018, the state board approved administrative rules to expand access to high school equivalency. Before that time, we were only using a test to be able to award that credential. We opened up additional pathways for that so that now we can use credits, high school credits, as well as post-secondary credits to earn that degree. We also recognize those that might have a degree in other countries, associate's degree or higher, and recognize the skills and abilities to be able to award, once their English is to a proficient level, a high school equivalency that's issued by the state of Iowa. We work with, again, a number of ESL skills, and these are the full list of services and activities that adult education provides. We're really excited about number 6 and 7. I highlighted it even. This is an area that is new under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It allows the contextualization and concurrent delivery of basic skills with workforce training skills. So it allows us to accelerate the learning of our individuals. So they're not just moving towards getting a secondary degree, but they're also getting industry recognized credentials that is leading them to, being ready for the work as soon as they leave our programs, which is really exciting. Number 7 is, again, focusing on the ESL needs. Many of our individuals have professional degrees, but they might need a little bit of training and upskilling to be able to enter our industries and our professions. And we want to make sure that they have those skills necessary. Our funds are competitively allocated. So there's a competition, K-12, higher education, community-based organizations are eligible for this funding. Currently, we only fund, or we're currently funding community colleges. Those were the applications that we received. We're in a grant cycle right now, 5 years. We're just finishing up year 2, moving into year 3 of that grant cycle. And through the community colleges, though, we're able to access all 99 counties. We are able to offer services for our programs in 100 different locations throughout the state. And you can look at some of our facilities. Waterloo has a multi-million-dollar facility that's just dedicated to adult education. We have programs that are doing it here in Des Moines at the Oak Ridge Neighborhood Community Center. We also have in Red Oak, where we're providing services at a church. So our locations are diverse, really to address the needs of the individuals that we're serving. In the report, we're really highlighting 3 different things: the expenditures, our enrollment, and our performance in adult education. So that's the information that you'll see there. In addition to the federal funds that we receive, since 2014, we've received Iowa Skilled Worker and Job Creation Fund. That's a state allocation that is intended to match and meet the maintenance requirement of our federal funds. That's roughly about $5 million that we receive that is allocated. All the funds are allocated based on formula. I'm really looking at performance, looking at needs of the community colleges and the areas where our services are provided. In 2019, we received an additional bump in our ESL, another $500,000 to serve that need, which was good timing and anticipated refugee increase. It also addresses those needs of those low-skilled ESL participants. We serve many that never attended schooling in their native country, are eligible in their own ability to read and write in their native language. So there's a lot of skill sets there that we need to build upon. 2021 introduced sort of an interesting dilemma just coming off of COVID. We had some changes in staffing and things like that kind of drove our budget to be a little bit more than what we normally carry forward. So some of them struggled just because they pivoted to hybrid learning. Some instructors were no longer able to offer classes at their facilities because needed to close down for safety reasons. So they had a little bit of a bump in those funds. So we're working through that surplus. So this year kind of reflects that. But in the report, it sort of breaks out where those expenses went. So you can see that the bulk of those money is going towards instruction. Administration is included in there, professional development. So that's how that works. And enrollment numbers, we also saw the impact of COVID. That year, 2021 represented our significant decrease in numbers. Typically, we're closer to 9,000, over 9,000 that we serve. But we do have a significant number who walk through our doors that don't become participants. Federally, to become a participant, they have to stay with us at least 12 hours. So some didn't make that. So we actually had over 10,000 who walked through our doors, but we can only report on the 7,000 number. And it shows a little bit of breakdown of the classification of who we serve in the programs. So our enrollment was a little bit down in ESL numbers with only 34%. Typically, it's closer to almost 50-50 in our numbers of who we serve. I can report that as of today, I looked at our numbers and we're back up to serving over 8,000 as participants. So I see this year in this report as an anomaly, not as a trajectory of where we're at. This gives you a little bit of information, background on actually who we serve. So 54% were female, 37% identified as white, and 50% are between that working age there of 25 to 44. We saw a significant increase in the number that we served through distance education, and we served over 1,000 that were incarcerated. So our programs are behind the wall. We do serve within those facilities, either at jails, because there's some that are long-term in jails, but we also serve in the state penitentiaries. Of those enrolled, A lot of myths around adult education is that they just need to get their high school equivalency. They're coming to us with high skills. And 74% do report that they dropped out between 9th and 12th grade. And we've got 12.5% that report that they have a post-secondary degree. So you would think that, but actually when we assess them, and we assess them in reading and math, only 18% are within that 9th grade or above level. The bulk of our students, you can see there, are classify them in different education and functioning levels. So you can see the bulk of them are within that level 4, and that's middle school. That covers grades 6 through 8, actually. So the ESL levels, 1 through 6, that only takes an individual up to ABE level 3. So we start with several that are below even kindergarten level, if you were to use grade level equivalencies. We don't, but that's a maybe easier way of being able to relate to that. And then the last part of the report sort of focuses on performance, what we actually do with our participants. We have 5 areas that the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act requires us to report on. Only one of those outcomes is based upon them actually being in our program, and that's measurable skill gains. Can we measure, are they moving up to another level? And some of those are multiple grade levels. So we work with individuals on a short period of time to move them up multiple grade levels. And that's significant, being able to accomplish that. So we also have outcome measures that we have to report on. So once they leave us, do they end up in a job? Did they end up with further training? So we measure on that as well. So of those that we tracked for measurable skill gains, we had 44% of ours that made gains. We awarded over 1,200 high school equivalencies throughout that year. And of those that we post-tested, we saw a 65% gain. So it's significant to be able to measure that. We fell a little short of our federal benchmark. We had set it at 47%. So we were just a little short of that. However, when we look at our participants at exit, whether or not they attained employment in the 2nd, 4th quarter, what their median wages were, we met and exceeded our benchmarks with that. It's important to note that, yes, we only achieved measurable skill gains at 44%, but the national average is 39%. So again, in all of these measures, we exceed the national average. I circled there credential attainment for you, because for the 2nd year in a row, Iowa led the nation in credential attainment. Credential attainment means that individuals received a post-secondary degree. So that blending that occurs with adult education and achieving credentials, or they received a high school equivalency, and then within 1 year of leaving our program, they were employed or they were enrolled in a post-secondary education training program. So at 77%, again, that far exceeds the national average. And like I said, it's the top of the nation. And that concludes my report, only to highlight that this work doesn't just happen by me. We have a great team behind this work. And we've got data specialists, we've got individuals that really are engaged with the community colleges at all aspects of this programming. Annually, we do monitoring of all the programs to ensure grant compliance, to ensure that they're working towards these outcomes and measuring, again, for Iowa, these levels of achievement. So do you have any questions?
I'm curious how you work with employers, especially those, so the immigrant communities and the ESL activities.
Absolutely, because our students, 53% of them are employed when they come to our program. So we're definitely working with employers to, one, recruit our participants. But another activity that we do on that list is actually go into employers and provide the services directly there, so that they don't have to travel to our sites, but we can provide them on site. And we've got some very innovative programs that are modeled around how to advance individuals that might have started at an entry-level job, but they need some more skills to be able to move to the next. So our programs are able to do that. So we work with partners both at the community college as well as with our workforce development partners to identify the employers, to develop the curriculum around that, and to really customize it so that we're meeting the needs of the employers. And that takes time. It does. It takes a lot of commitment to develop that curriculum and to be able to get cohorts through that model, but it's successful. I shared with you the median wage. That's the median wage. If they go through one of these programs, their median wage is $11,000 an hour. I mean, $11,000 compared to that $6,000. So we know that's effective.
So do you see that increasing?
We definitely do. But again, it takes certain dedication and time to be able to get in there. I know that for our part-time instructors, it's hard to build a career around the shifts at the different employers. It's hard to be able to have enough time, and when double shift is mandatory and things like that, then you don't have a class to teach. So it does create its own set of barriers. But we definitely see, again, that's why I highlighted 6 and 7 as areas of growth for us. We definitely know that we need to be able to reach more employers and to be able to engage the employees that are there. So it's definitely a priority.
Speak just a minute about the incarcerated.
Yeah.
That piques my interest at how you're delivering a program, obviously through distance learning, I would assume.
No, not always. Not always. Technology is a huge barrier in corrections. So if we're doing distance education, sometimes it's through even work packets and things like that. A lot of it is face-to-face as much as we can. During COVID, we had lockouts, and Animosa has been especially difficult to get back into. But we are definitely excited about the growth of that. One of my other hats that I wear, I guess there's many of us with multiple hats, is directly working with incarcerated corrections, education and expanding that. We now have 4 of our 5 community colleges that are approved for Second Chance Pell. So we see more growth in corrections education. And as more growth and more opportunities come up, I see more needing to get that basic education, the adult education piece, getting their high school equivalency and then moving into Pell programming. So we definitely see growth and anticipated expansion of our adult education programming in there. But it's a struggle. I won't lie, because again, technology, some of those walls are really thick. And we're not able to get any reception for that, but we are able to get testing in there. We remotely bring in our high school equivalency test. We're able to do it offline and then take it out and upload the scores once we're back into better reception, and we're able to see the results from that. We actually get better results. And I'm not saying because it's a captive audience, but I am saying that we get better results with our incarcerated individuals. Maybe there's fewer barriers, maybe there's fewer distractions to it, but those are dedicated and want to see. And I'm just knowing that more opportunities for post-secondary achievement and bachelor degrees, other master programs, it's going to see a growth in our adult education programming. So I'm excited about that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
If I can piggyback, one of the major indicators of recidivism for felons is whether or not they actually do attain some sort of educational advancement. And this might not be a question for you, might be just kind of a broader question, but like, what are you, and if you're not, like, what do you think can be done to sort of, before they become incarcerated, ensure that the standards are being met, or they're making those achievements to like prevent them from, becoming criminals in the first place, and having, it's great that we can help them after the fact, but it'd be better if we could do it on the front end. And I don't know what involvement that means with you in like closing that loop and short circuiting that process. Do you have thoughts on that?
Always, but
I think we both do. I think one of the things is we have a broader conversation that we'll be talking about of how we rethink how we meet the needs of students earlier on, is intended to address some of that. Kids often feel that can't find a connection or be successful early on in our school systems, that lead us down a different path. So as we scale back, that's the wrong word. We step back and start looking at when that disconnect first happens and focus on more kind of broadening the scope of how we connect with kids. The idea is that we can connect with some of that sooner. Separate from that, we've had conversations about I've had conversations even with Director Skinner on how we can better engage with students that the system has failed them, to ask them, what was the point? What was the piece? What was the thing that caused this not to work for you, that potentially led to that path? And we haven't really been able to move forward with that yet because of just different things, but really having those firsthand conversations to hear from them as adults now. Tell us what it was so we can use that and go back and rethink our system. So those are conversations we're going to start having in terms of just how more broadly think, meeting the needs of kids so that they can find that the place like this works. I'm thinking too about and I think I've shared this before, a program called Starts Right Here that has this facility in the Des Moines area that is specifically targeted to kids that are on the brink of, they've either been in and out of the system, the school have not met their needs, and how can they find a place for them to help get them to a place where they can learn, get them to a place where they feel like they have a connection so they can't enter back into whatever type of formalized learning they need so that they can be successful. As we engage with more of those, I think we refer to them as wraparound services and supports for kids outside of the school, we can do a better job of ensuring we don't.
You talked to us just a little bit about service providers. Who provides the services that we're talking about? Do we have people on staff are we just recruiting people? Are these the same folks? Do they turn over? Can you talk to us about that just a little bit?
I can. I just want to, those are great recommendations for connecting them. I definitely like to be engaged in some of those conversations because the sooner that we can engage them and not be seen as a competition to K-12. I certainly don't want K-12 students. I mean, stay in that school, but if an alternative is needed, I definitely want to be able to provide effective services and get them as quickly through our program and on the way to their next step as possible. But yes, in the community colleges, they do hire instructors. Unfortunately, 80% of those instructors are part-time. And with that, it's hard to retain. It's hard to recruit. It's hard to be competitive in our recruitment. And a lot of that, unfortunately, we're seeing through COVID and the impact of COVID is that our typical pool of retired K-12 teachers are not coming back and wanting to re-engage and become adult education instructors. We do have standards. We do require professional development ongoing for them. We do work with them to ensure that they're teaching to standards. They're not teaching to a test, they're teaching to college and career readiness standards so that they're effectively not moving into developmental education when they enroll in community colleges or other programs, but they're able to move into post-secondary effectively. It is a struggle to be able to have that turnover and that constant shift. And we're also seeing that with our coordinators. So we have 15 coordinators, each of the community colleges. We've lost 3 within this program year. So that's a struggle as well. It does require dedication and focus on the grant and knowledge of what those performance measures are and what the data is. Because this is pretty rigorous as far as what the data requirements are for post-testing, for being able to make gains. It does require, we use managed enrollment for adult education so that it's not a drop-in center where students just come in and start on one day and stop the next day and new students, because we found that wasn't effective. As teachers, you're trying to teach lesson plans and cover a certain amount of curriculum. And when your students change every week, you feel like you're back at square one to get everybody caught up. So we have implemented certain practices to help those instructors. We are building out Canvas courses so that online individuals are able to do hybrid face-to-face learning with those curriculums so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they're starting a new class, but they have a base of curriculum to draw from. That standard base that's aligned to those college and career readiness standards.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And can I ask you one more question? I'm just curious.
No.
Does someone walk in the office and say, I'm ready to take the test? I'm tired of high school. Have you had that happen?
I get personal calls about that.
Test.
That's right. We have requirements that there needs to be a drop slip from K-12. So some of that implements conversations then with the school district to say, what are the needs of the student? How can we support them? How can you support them? Is the student really ready for that? Unfortunately, some of the stories that are around bullying and things like that, it's just not a good fit and things like that. We do have requirements that you have to be 16 years and 9 months before you can actually take the test. We can enroll you and help you with preparing for that before that. But we really want you to be, there's mandatory age requirements that you have to stay in K-12. And we know that there's support around that. And we want to encourage you to utilize those. As an adult, we might have fewer supports for you, but we do have, and the community colleges certainly offer student services. We really appreciate the community colleges stepping up, and they register them as college students. They get college IDs. They're able to access free transportation as part of that. They're able to access the libraries and the facilities that the college has. They really embrace them as pipeline students for them. So that helps to shift that conversation and gets them ready.
Just curious. Thank you.
You bet.
Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
You bet. Thank you.
Question, if I can.
Oh, very quick.
Alex, I want you to restate this for us. With the data, say it again, we're leading the nation with our.
Oh, credential attainment.
We're leading the nation with our credential attainment. I think in Iowa, we have a tendency to be humble.
Model, and we really linked it to the community colleges and their ability to do post-secondary education. So that not only were they working on basic skills, but they are working on industry recognized credentials. So we linked that to CNA, we linked that to CDLs, we linked that to CNC. So again, that example of Waterloo and that multi-million-dollar facility, they've got CNA beds actually set up there. So you have adult education in one room, you walk to the next and you do CNA classes. They've got CNC machinery right there so that you can walk in there and get hands-on experience. They've linked so that the teachers are co-teaching. So they've got a CTE instructor that's in there doing, well, I've got adult education instructors who actually went through the CNA program so that they could teach CNA and get that endorsement so that they could do it. So that blending is what helped to lead us to credential attainment. Knowing though that we needed to expand our IET, we're going to open it up to even micro credentials, maybe some less that don't count as credential attainment, but still will lead to entry-level jobs. So our lead in the nation might slip as we expand IETs, but we really pushed these last couple of years IET models that were linked to post-secondary credentials. And if I broke your thing, Carol, I apologize.
Thank you, Alex.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. That's
Thank you
cool.
very much.
Next agenda item is the K-12 computer science.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Dennis Harden, and I'm the Bureau Chief for Technical Education. And I'm here to introduce Justin Lewis. Justin is our computer science consultant, extraordinaire, by the way. And he's going to share with you our draft computer science state plan and give you a little bit of an update on some things around computer science.
Well, good morning, state board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on behalf of the department about Iowa's draft K-12 computer science plan. It is attached to the agenda as an electronic copy. So as a brief introduction, my name is Justin Lewis and I'm the department's computer science consultant. Since my appointment to this position in November, we have worked very hard to enhance the opportunities and impact of computer science education across the state. As you're all aware, computer science has become a new basic skill in today's economy. And as a department, in response to the goals and priorities set forth by Future Ready Iowa, we want to ensure that all of our K-12 students are offered high quality computer science education that prepares them for personal and professional success. Iowa's K-12 computer science journey began in 2017 with Senate File 274, which, as you know, called for the State Board of Education to establish computer science standards and establish the Computer Science Professional Development Incentive Fund. Governor Kim Reynolds and the legislature built upon that legislation with House File 2629, which was passed unanimously, and for the first time set forth that K-12 schools provide computer science instruction across all grade bands. The first of these requirements begins this July 1, 2022, with high schools offering at least one high-quality one-semester course, and middle school and elementary schools will follow, providing high-quality computer science education in at least one grade level by July 1, 2023. In addition to this, Governor Reynolds' plan also called for districts and the state to develop their K-12 computer science plans by July 1, 2022. To support these requirements, the department has made available a number of computer science funding opportunities to assist the districts. Those opportunities include grants to assist districts with the cost of attending CS for All workshops to begin development of their K-12 computer science plans. The Computer Science Curriculum and Professional Development Grant, made available thanks to a generous portion of a 2007 court-approved settlement with Microsoft Corporation, which provides funds for the purchase of curriculum and associated professional development and materials for schools, as well as the Computer Science Professional Development Incentive Fund, which covers tuition for teachers to earn computer science endorsements, as well as helping to pay for proven professional development activities. With the modifications and expansions of some of the funding opportunities since this past November, I'm happy to state that we have nearly 1,100 educators currently involved in computer science related professional development over the next few months, over 100 educators currently working toward their computer science endorsements, and a student impact approaching 175,000 students in Iowa. These opportunities were developed and provided to a number of stakeholders across our state, including representatives from our industries, districts, community colleges, our four-year higher education programs, and especially our local AEAs and the statewide computer science team. Iowa's K-12 computer science plan is heavily influenced by the findings and recommendations of the Computer Science Work Group, which was also created by House File 2629. Leaders from business, industry, and education and other sectors spent many months developing this plan to ensure opportunities for all students to be future ready. It prioritizes the next steps to enhance computer science education over the next several years. And the plan places a large emphasis on improving educator preparation and professional development, as well as bridging gaps for students lacking a strong minimum level of computer science education. It recognizes the importance of continuing to do this in an ongoing collaboration with key stakeholders, including employers and educators alike. This calls for the departments to assist educator preparation programs to improve computer science preparatory pathways, as well as to improve licensure options for our teachers in partnership with the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners. We will also look for ways to enhance the department's computer science teacher training, including knowledge of accessible, approachable curricula that meets the needs of students with diverse backgrounds. We must define what a strong minimum level for computer science education means for Iowa, and provide resources for districts to routinely update and further develop their computer science programming. We also must work strategically with other resources like Iowa eLearning Central and embed work-based learning experiences in computer science courses using the Iowa Work-Based Learning Guide to support this integration. These main priorities truly will set the tone for broadening the impact of computer science on today's students, as well as Iowa's future workforce. To reinforce the exciting opportunities students have within computer science, the plan establishes promotion of computer science celebrations like an Iowa Tech Jam, including our K-12 schools, districts, community colleges, four-year program students, and educators alike. The plan concludes with ensuring continual reflection and review of the K-12 computer science plan and leading longer-term strategic planning beyond 2026. With the acknowledgement of success we have seen thus far, the department also recognizes the inherent challenges in implementation, not only for the state, but also districts as they work to identify quality computer science educators, develop related course pathways, and seek to support their staff with high-quality professional development. State computer science funding has been a critical resource for schools in the past. So it is with this knowledge and understanding that the plan recommends increasing the annual state appropriation for computer science funding to meet the higher expectations it sets forth. The department will seek public feedback on the plan over the next few weeks before it is finalized and delivered to the governor and legislature by July 1. And we deeply appreciate your continuous support for improving computer science education for all K-12 students across the state, and look forward to any questions and comments. Thank you.
Questions for Justin?
Regarding their continual modernization, obviously the tech world isn't waiting for a committee. Things are moving very fast. So what is the plan to like stay ahead of that or stay abreast of that as best we can and not be teaching old or even obsolete tech to kids who need relevant things?
Absolutely.
Can I add one thing to that question? Not only including skills and abilities, but keeping pace with equipment.
Yep, both very, very important. So one of the first steps that this plan lays forth is reestablishment of that computer science work group with all of our stakeholders and entities. So we would like to bring back to the table those industries, those businesses, those work group members that were part of it. Not only with that, but our 9 local AEAs and our educators to essentially establish a group that is continuously looking at this and developing that plan further. So for us, this essentially establishes the scope of the work that we're going to be looking at over the next 4 to 5 years, and really setting that foundation to where we can get this group back together and figuring out, just like you said, the tech world changes very quickly. Technology changes. Our schools that are purchasing technology and equipment, all of that changes very rapidly. So to develop the ideas on how we are going to essentially meet the needs of that, I think that is where that work group is going to come in very influentially, and we'll be able to establish that relatively quickly.
Can I add something to that? Because I was part of these very initial conversations on setting the standards and even an endorsement. And that was a very issue. How do you standardize something that you can't keep up with? So you put those in place at a high enough level that it forces the conversation to continue. But the best way to solve it is to have more direct, immediate connections with the businesses and with the industry, allowing them to come in and teach, allowing them to partner with the schools. That's part of a broader conversation we'll have on how we do a better job of connecting with all service industries. But that need is so prevalent, and there's a willingness there to engage. We have to get them into our system so that it is timely, it is relevant. We've even had conversations on, do we call it something else? Because when I say computer science to you, do you even really know what that means? Does a 15-year-old know what that means? But when you provide them examples, then they do. When you show it to them, then they do. So that entire conversation is going to be part of this other evolution of how we kind of rethink what that engagement looks like.
And if I might, as a member of the STEM, the Governor's STEM Council, some of this conversation really grew out of discussions we were having. And so the computer sciences elementary pilot really talks about programming language as another ABC, 1, 2, 3, kids learning that as they go through primary school, so that becomes kind of embedded. And then when you get to the middle school, high school, that's when you bring in that what's current and what's new, but you've already built that foundation kind of all the way through that. And this is, again, from my very limited engagement on that very specific initiative, but I see us building the platform that will help students gain those basic skills and knowledge so that once they get to the middle school, high school, they'll be able to engage with the employers and that technology. I think the funding is obviously going to continue to be, we're always needing to look there, but the way this is built, it's really got a plan that will be that continuum of education pull through that K-12 and then into career or college or whatever's next.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You said you were seeking additional funding. How much funding do you have now?
The state appropriation annually is $500,000.
Wow.
It's not a lot.
For a statewide program.
Is that for the educator prep or the?
That is for the incentive fund. So that covers teacher endorsements as well as high quality professional development opportunities.
One of the concerns I've heard is having enough computer science educators to meet the demands of offer and teach and everything else that goes along with that. I know, Justin, that you're not in charge of financing this operation, but I know that our school district in Isle Falls, we did receive a computer science grant, and which was good because I learned what computer science was too at that time. And it's so much more broad than what I was imagining, but the grant funding is going to be crucial, and the support for schools is going to be crucial if this whole initiative is going to start on a good foot.
Yes. And like you said, I'm not in charge of that. I can put my recommendations out there, but I am well aware of what we can do if we have that funding. I think what we have done in the past, 6 months with the funding that we've had available and getting 1,100 educators into high quality professional development, getting over 100 educators into the CS endorsement pathways, that data we know what impact we can make with the funding that we can make available.
Is it the funding or is it the oncoming accreditation expectation that's driving the numbers?
Well, I don't
be curious how many kids graduate every year with an education degree in computer science. I mean, is that degree available? How many are we graduating?
I cannot speak to the number that are graduating with computer science and degrees. I don't have that number in front of me, but I can tell you that our latest data shows that only 10% are essentially taking a high quality computer science course in that 9-12 range. So it's a rather low percentage that we would like to increase.
All right. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Open enrollment. Thomas, you got something for us?
It's still morning for 5 more minutes. Mr. President, Lebo, members, my name is Thomas Smith. I am rules coordinator for the department. I'm one of the department's attorneys. I am native Iowan. I grew up in Scott County, Illinois, occupied Iowa, and went to Davenport North High School. So had a sort of an emotional interest in this board's work with Davenport. I'm also usually the person who catches you up on time. So I will try my best to catch you up on time. This rulemaking before you is fleshing out an additional safety valve that this legislature added for open enrollment. So typically the date for school-age children to open enroll out of a district is March 1st. What happens if something happens after March 1st? Prior to House File 847, there was an exception to that March 1st deadline for pervasive harassment that the school wasn't addressing or couldn't address, or a serious health condition that the school could not otherwise accommodate. This additional safety valve is, my elevator speech for it is inattention to academic failure. If the school is not attending to a student's academic failure, the legislature created that as an additional safety valve. This rulemaking went out for public comment. We received one public comment about the sort of the duration of that inattention. How long, would it be enough to qualify for this late filing for missing a progress measurement probe? Or I provided 1 week of on evidence-based instruction. Would that be enough? So the Iowa Association of School Boards asked for a time frame. How long must this inattention last before parents have this safety valve to pursue education in another public school district? Fair concern. In the process, we discussed how long should that be with representatives from the Iowa Association of School Boards. It started out, well, how about a year? Well, a year of inattention to academic failure is too long. And the department recommends to you a period of 12 weeks, which is a quarter. And that period if during that 12-week period, a school district failed to provide evidence-based interventions to a student who's struggling, or they failed to progress measure during that instruction, or they failed to respond to, I did everything I was supposed to do. I gave evidence-based instruction. I might measure progress over time, but I did not make instructional changes in light of lack of progress. Any one of those things during a 12-week period would trigger this safety valve. So the recommendation to you is to adopt these rules with that change. That change is specific to, it's incorporated in paragraph C on page 4 of your rulemaking. So Janelle Brandhorst, the Bureau Chief for School Improvement, in whose Bureau Open Enrollment sits, she's here to answer any questions that you may have, as well as my colleague, Rachel Bosovich, one of the other attorneys for the department who supports the work of Janelle's Bureau. So if you have any questions for the three of us, I'm at your disposal. We are at your disposal.
Questions from the board?
Pretty straightforward.
The comment, this is how government's supposed to work. A good comment that the people who actually know what they're talking about thought about, and then gave me something to plug into the rulemaking template. So kudos to the Iowa Association of School Boards for bringing this to attention and for the work of staff in making this happen. So that concludes the department's recommendation. The recommendation is to adopt and file this rule.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved in second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
I did my best to get you back on schedule.
Good.
All right. Lunch.
And we did have scheduled a break starting at 11:50 with lunch and board reports to start at 12:25. Would you like to add an additional 10 minutes? We reconvene at 12:35, so we have that full time for lunch.
Reconvene at 12:35 with the board reports or?
Okay, 12:35, we will reconvene.